The Turning Point in Deception, Top Secret Tactics for D-Day. As long as there has been war, there has been deception. In 1300 BC, Gideon used deception to conquer the Midianites. In 1066 AD, William the Conqueror used deception in the Battle of Hastings. Napoleon used deception to cross the Po River in 1796, and in the Civil War, Stonewall Jackson used deception to catch McClellan's army by surprise. By the 20th century, deception was rarely used due to the difficulty of matching the complexity and scale of modern warfare. The unique deception employed for D-Day was a turning point in history because it restored deception tactics as an important element of warfare and altered the outcome of World War II. If deception had not been used, the Normandy invasion would have failed. As a result, the Holocaust and the Nazi occupation of Europe would have continued. In 1939, the Nazis began conquering Europe, starting with Czechoslovakia, Austria, and Poland. By the beginning of 1943, Nazi Germany had conquered the majority of Europe. At the end of 1943, the Allies gained control of part of Italy, then the USSR began the first front on Germany's eastern border, and the Nazis became consumed with fighting them. If a second front was created, Germany would not have been able to maintain its boundaries. For the Nazis to have any hope of victory, they could not allow the Allies to create a second front. The Nazi solution to this problem was to build the Atlantic Wall, a giant array of mines, pillboxes, and gun batteries along the coast from Norway to Spain. Overseeing the construction was Field Marshals Rundstedt and Rommel. But there was one problem with this plan. Building this massive fortification would take several years because of the Nazis' lack of supplies and transports needed to construct it, in part due to Allied bombing and sabotage to the railroads by the French resistance. The Allies knew they had only one chance to create a second front, and it needed to happen before the Atlantic Wall was completed. There was a major problem for the Allies as well. Although the Nazis were lacking transport, they were not lacking men. If the Nazis devoted all of their available troops to defending the western border, an Allied invasion would fail. The Allies needed to find a way to disguise a second front for at least 2 weeks, long enough to establish position. But the question was, how do you hide an invading army? The D-Day deception's goal was to make Hitler believe that D-Day was only a feint to the real invasion. If they succeeded, Hitler would keep all of his reserve forces in locations other than Normandy. This was accomplished through a complex deception plan codenamed Operation Fortitude. Fortitude was divided into 3 parts: Fortitude North, Fortitude South, and Fortitude South II. The first part of the operation was Fortitude North. The objective was to make the Nazis believe that there was a large force in Scotland preparing to invade Norway. The Allies had to make the Nazis believe they had enough resources to carry this operation out. They used 2 methods. First, in January of 1944, 24 British officers were sent to North Scotland, where they spent several months exchanging radio messages. They filled the air with an exact duplicate of the radio traffic that accompanies the assembly of a real army. Frequent communication in a low-level, easily broken cipher. These messages created an impression of division headquarters scattered all across Scotland. The second part of Fortitude North was accomplished through the double-cross system. This system monitored all radio traffic between the United Kingdom and Nazi Germany. By D-Day, every spy in Allied territory had been captured, and a majority of them made the choice to become a double agent. These double agents sent messages to the Nazis describing heavy train traffic, new division patches in Scotland, and rumors among the troops of invading Norway. Due to Fortitude North, a panzer division, 1,500 coastal defense guns, and 150,000 Nazi troops that would have otherwise been stationed in France were kept in Norway. Part 2 of the operation was Fortitude South. Its goal was to make the Nazis believe that there was a large force in Dover preparing to invade Pas-de-Calais, so they would post the 15th Army there rather than Normandy. This fake army was codenamed the 1st United States Army Group, or the FUSAG. It was made to appear real through several methods. To fool any aerial reconnaissance, the Allies created army bases that appeared to be real from the air but were in reality phony. They made fake tanks, trucks, ships, aircraft, oil storage depots, airfields, and tire tracks. To add credibility, General Patton was assigned as the leader of this fake army. Another part of Fortitude South was bogus radio signals over the Dover area, much like in Fortitude North. These signals were created by the US 3103rd Signals Battalion and the British 3118th Signal Service Group. The last part of this deception used the double-cross system. Double agents sent constant messages warning of a massive force assembling in Dover. The most successful of the double agents, by far, was the Spaniard Juan Pujol Garcia. This agent, known as Garbo, was crucial to the deception. Without his constant warnings that the FUSAG was preparing to attack Calais, Hitler would have sent the 15th Army to Normandy several weeks sooner, and the Allied invasion would have failed. Shortly before the troops landed at Normandy, the Allies heavily bombed Calais and dropped chaff over the ocean to give the Nazis false radar readings. Next, in Calais, they dropped hundreds of sack dummy paratroopers and 10 real men with recordings of men shouting to confuse and stall the Nazis long enough for the real troops to land at Normandy. Lastly, Garbo sent a message warning of the Normandy invasion. This message was timed so that it looked like a warning, but it was too late to act upon. In the same message, Garbo stated that the Normandy invasion was only a feint to the real invasion, which would come on a later date in Calais. Shortly after midnight on June 6, 1944, the invasion began. First to land was the 9th Parachute Battalion. Their mission? Take the Merville Battery, a gun battery in range of 3 of the beaches. Even though only a quarter of the battalion met at the rendezvous point, they still achieved their goal. The 5 main landing sites were Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, and Sword. Everyone's ending goal was Caen, a large city slightly inland from the coast. None of the divisions reached Caen, but they all managed to gain control of the beaches. The news of the invasion spread like wildfire. It was all that was talked about on radio stations and newspapers. Headlines read, "Invasion! Our troops land in North France." The Allied citizens were filled with a new hope that the end of the war was in sight. Wives, mothers, and children believed that their loved ones might even be home for Christmas. Anne Frank speculated, "This is D-Day. This is the day. Would the long-awaited liberation ever come true? Could we be granted victory in this year, 1944? After the troops landed at Normandy, the Allies still needed to keep the Nazis from devoting all of their resources to fend off the front. As a result, the third and final part of Operation Fortitude was carried out, Fortitude South 2. It continued the deception of the FUSAG and periodically bombed Calais and its communications. Garbo continued to weave his web of lies. He sent constant messages stating that the invasion of Normandy was a maneuver to make them move all of their troops away from where the real front from the FUSAG would come, Pas-de-Calais. Because of his improved credibility from his warning on D-Day, he was successful. The Nazis were persuaded to keep the 15th Army in Calais.
The fact that the Normandy deception really stayed in force for more than a month really is due in large part to the German High Command and Hitler's unwillingness to believe that this really was a deception.
On July 25, 1944, Operation Cobra was carried out, and the Allies broke out of the beachhead. This ferocious bombing caused Hitler to realize that the Normandy invasion really did pose a distinct threat, but by then it was too late. The Nazi troops were sent into disarray and weren't able to mount a counterattack until December, known as the Battle of the Bulge. The Allies were victorious in the Battle of the Bulge, and on May 9, 1945, the Allies captured Berlin and Nazi Germany surrendered. If the D-Day deception had failed, 4 tank divisions, 1,500 coastal guns, 150,000 additional troops, and the 15th Army would have been at Normandy waiting to intercept the invasion. Without the deception, the invasion of Normandy would have failed. The Allies had enough resources for only one invasion attempt. If the Normandy landings had failed, the outcome of the war would have been very different.
It's important for people to understand that not only was deception important for the Normandy invasion, it continued to be important throughout the fighting in Europe.
The D-Day deception was successful beyond all expectations. This proved that deception could be effectively used, even with the modern complexity of warfare. Years later, complex deception was used in the invasion of the Bay of Pigs, the Cold War, and the Gulf War. The D-Day deception altered the outcome of World War II and restored deception tactics as an important element of warfare.